At my birthday dinner, my husband raised his glass and said, to my wife, the woman who ruined everything. Everyone laughed. His girlfriend laughed the loudest. I didn't. I slid one envelope across the table and said, check your phones. Everything you own just stopped existing. My name is Evelyn Hart. And the night my marriage died was the night 40 people realized they'd spent years underestimating the wrong woman. He chose the restaurant on purpose. Not because it was romantic, because it was expensive. The kind of place where the lighting makes people look better than they are, where the menus feel like leather in your hands, and where the staff smiles like they've been trained to forget what they witness. A private room. Dark wood walls. Soft music. Crystal glasses arranged like a threat. When we walked in, I saw 40 seats. 40 guests. His investors. His partners. His friends from college. Family members who loved him more than they ever tried to understand me. I thought it was a celebration. That's the part that still makes me laugh sometimes, quietly, alone. Because when you're a woman who's been trained to be grateful for the bare minimum, you can mistake a public performance for love. I wore a simple black dress. Not because I wanted to disappear. Because I didn't need to scream to be heard. My husband, Graham, walked ahead of me like he always did, with that effortless confidence men develop when they've spent years believing the world was designed for them. He shook hands. Smiled. Accepted praise. And every time someone looked at me, they smiled politely, the way people smile at furniture that comes with the house. Evelyn, they said, as if saying my name was enough effort. Then they turned back to him. And then I saw her. Sitting at his right. Not in the extra chair space. Not in the +1 space. At his right hand, like she belonged there. She wore a pale dress that looked like it was designed to photograph well. Hair perfect. Lips glossy. Smile sharp. Her hand rested lightly on his thigh. Not hidden. Not subtle. Like a flag planted into land she expected to keep. And the worst part? No one acted surprised. No one looked uncomfortable. No one whispered, is that? It wasn't scandal. It was an announcement. They knew. All of them. I was the only one who hadn't been invited into the truth yet. Dinner began with small talk that tasted like expensive air. People discussed deals. Partnerships. Real estate. Trips. I watched plates arrive in perfect timing, watched glasses refill before anyone asked, watched laughter rise at the head of the table like smoke from a fire that was already burning. I didn't touch much food. I kept my face neutral. And while the room played its part, I studied details. Because that's what I've always done. When you grow up learning that being loud doesn't protect you, you learn to become observant instead. You learn to watch. To listen. To notice what other people miss. Graham talked like a man who believed his own myth. He told stories about starting from nothing, about building his firm, about taking risks. And every time he said those words, something inside me stayed perfectly calm. Because I knew exactly what nothing was. Nothing was the nights I stayed awake working while he slept. Nothing was the years I made his life run smooth while he took credit for the shine. Nothing was the quiet labor that built the foundation under his feet. He spoke like a hero. But I knew he'd never actually built anything alone. He just had an incredible talent for standing in front of other people's work. By dessert, the energy in the room shifted. Like everyone was waiting for the real show. A chocolate cake appeared with one thin candle. A waiter placed it in front of me and stepped back. People clapped lazily. The girlfriend clapped with enthusiasm, almost too much. Graham stood. Tapped his glass gently. The room fell silent instantly, trained on him like he was the main act. He smiled. This dinner, he said, isn't for love. A ripple of laughter. It's for closure. More laughter. People expected a toast. A joke. A dramatic anniversary speech. Then he turned toward me. And he said the words like he'd rehearsed them. You failed as a wife. I didn't move. And tonight, he continued, we're done. The room erupted. Not shocked laughter, relieved laughter. The kind of laughter that says, finally. The kind that says, we knew before you did. His girlfriend laughed the loudest. She leaned forward, her smile wide, and finally, she looked right at me. Not with guilt. With triumph. Like she'd been waiting to see if I'd break. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Because I wasn't hearing this for the first time. I'd been living this ending for months. You see, people think betrayal happens in one moment. It doesn't. Betrayal is usually slow. It's the way someone stops asking how your day was. The way they stop explaining decisions. The way your name disappears from rooms you helped build. It's 1,000 tiny erasures until one day you realize you've been quietly replaced. I reached into my purse. Slowly. Calmly. And I pulled out a sealed black envelope. The room was still laughing when I slid it across the polished table toward him. The laughter began to die, not because they respected me. Because they were confused. I looked at my husband and said, gently, before you celebrate, check your phones. People chuckled nervously. I kept my voice steady. Call your parents. Their house was repossessed an hour ago. Call your brother. His trust account is frozen. And call your partners, because your firm won't open tomorrow. Silence fell like a dropped glass. Someone's fork clinked against a plate. His girlfriend stopped smiling. My husband's face changed, just slightly. Not anger. Not disbelief. Fear. Because that's when he realized something, I wasn't bluffing. And whatever was inside that envelope had already started moving. My phone vibrated once. Then again. Then again. And across the table, other phones began buzzing too. One by one, screens lit up. Notifications. Missed calls. Bank alerts. Emails. Messages. The room shifted from smug to confused, from confused to worried, and from worried to panicked. Graham grabbed the envelope. His hands weren't steady anymore. He opened it. His eyes scanned the first page. Then the second. Then his face went pale. He looked up at me like he was staring at a stranger. What did you do? He whispered. I leaned in just enough for only him to hear. I stopped being the quiet woman you thought you could humiliate. And then I stood up. Smoothed my dress. And walked toward the door while 40 people sat frozen, watching the world they built begin to collapse in real time. As I reached the hallway outside the private room, I heard the first shout behind me, a man's voice cracking with panic, and I didn't turn around. Because the real story wasn't what happened in that room. It was what I had been doing for months, to make sure this night ended exactly the way I wanted. I didn't start planning my exit the night of my birthday. That was just the night everything became visible. The truth is, my marriage had been ending in silence for years. Long before the mistress. Long before the dinner. Long before the laughter. I met Graham Hart in graduate school. He was magnetic in the way men with ambition often are: loud confidence, big promises, endless certainty about a future he hadn't built yet. I was the opposite. Quiet. Focused. Brilliant in ways that don't announce themselves. While he talked about becoming someone important, I was already building something real. We bonded over late nights, over shared exhaustion, over dreams that sounded better when spoken out loud together. When he proposed, he said, "We'll be unstoppable as a team." I believed him. That was my first mistake. In the early years, we really did feel like a partnership. I helped him prepare pitches. Reviewed contracts. Caught errors he never noticed. When he founded Hartwell Advisory, I was there from day one. But no one ever saw me as a founder. I was introduced as my wife, Evelyn. She keeps things organized. She's amazing with details. Details. That's what they called the system I built from scratch. The predictive financial model that made his firm profitable. The algorithm that identified market shifts before competitors even noticed them. The backbone of every brilliant decision he took credit for. I wrote it alone. At home. At night. While he attended dinners and shook hands and learned how to sound impressive. And I let him take the credit. Because I thought that's what love was. Making yourself smaller so someone else can feel tall. The distance between us didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in. He stopped asking my opinion. Stopped explaining decisions. Stopped inviting me into rooms I helped design. The bed grew colder. Conversations shorter. Affection mechanical. And yet, I stayed. Not because I was weak, but because I was observant. I watched patterns. I noticed changes. I listened when people thought I wasn't listening. And slowly, I began to understand something dangerous. I wasn't just being neglected. I was being replaced. The first crack came on an ordinary morning. I'd made his coffee, black, strong, exactly the way he liked it. Placed it on the kitchen island. He didn't touch it. "I need you at the office early," he said, scrolling through his phone. "Big investor lunch. Make sure the conference room is perfect." Not "we need." "You need." I nodded automatically. Later that day, while organizing folders outside the glass conference room, I overheard two executives talking in the hallway. "He's bringing in his old college friend as chief strategist," one said. "About time. Big shift coming." The other laughed. "And what about her?" A pause. "She's just the wife. Always has been." They didn't see me standing there. But I felt something settle in my chest. Not shock. Recognition. That night, while backing up files at home, a habit Graham insisted on for security, I found the folder. Buried deep. Labeled simply, reorg. Inside were new organizational charts. Graham at the top. His college friend in a senior role. And my name? Nowhere. Not operations. Not tech. Not support. Just, gone. There was a memo attached. "Streamline redundant positions once personal matters are resolved." Personal matters. I stared at the screen for a long time. And for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt awake. A few days later, I stopped at a cafe near the office for lunch alone, something I rarely did. I'd barely sat down when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Stephanie. Graham's assistant. She was sitting with another woman, speaking in that excited whisper people use when they think they're sharing something delicious. "The birthday thing is all set," Stephanie said. "Private room downtown. He wants it perfect." Her friend laughed. "So it's really happening?" "Oh, absolutely," Stephanie replied. "He's been planning this for months. Making sure she won't have a leg to stand on when it's done." They giggled. "Poor thing still thinks it's a celebration." Then Stephanie said the sentence that changed everything. "Everyone knows about Lena." Everyone except her. Lena. I paid my bill with shaking hands and walked until the city felt unreal around me. That night, Graham came home late. Smelled faintly of someone else's perfume. He kissed my cheek like it was a chore and went straight to the shower. And I stood in the kitchen, holding a glass of water, realizing I wasn't angry. I was clear. The next day, I called Mari Ellis. An old friend from graduate school. Now a forensic accountant. We met somewhere quiet, far from anyone who might recognize me. I told her everything. The files. The reorganization. The mistress. The plan. She listened without interrupting. Then she leaned back and said something that changed the shape of my future. "Evelyn, this isn't just a divorce." I swallowed. "It's an erasure," she continued. "He's not leaving you. He's making sure no one remembers you were ever part of it." And in that moment, something inside me hardened, not into rage, but into resolve. I nodded slowly. "Then I won't disappear," I said. "I'll restructure." Mara smiled faintly. "Good," she said. "Let's make sure everything he owns depends on you." That night, while Graham slept beside me, his phone face down, buzzing softly with messages I didn't read, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. I had spent years being invisible. Now I would use that invisibility as armor. Late that night, locked inside the guest bathroom with my laptop balanced on my knees, I began creating the first shell company, a name no one would question, registered in a place no one would look. And as the confirmation email appeared on my screen, one thought settled calmly in my mind: by the time he humiliates me in public, everything he loves will already belong to me. I didn't rush. That was the most important part. People think revenge is loud, screaming, accusations, dramatic exits. But real power? Real power moves quietly. While Graham believed I was still the same woman, obedient, distracted, grateful, I began building a second life beneath the first one. Invisible. Legal. Irreversible. Late at night, when he fell asleep on the couch with his phone glowing softly in his hand, I locked myself in the guest bathroom upstairs. It was the only room in the house where the door clicked shut without questions. I sat on the edge of the tub, laptop balanced on my knees, and opened a clean screen. No emotions. No hesitation. Just work. I registered my first company under a name designed to disappear into paperwork, neutral, forgettable, respectable. Then another. And another. Each one placed carefully in jurisdictions where asset trails blurred just enough to look boring. Because boring is safe. Boring never gets audited. I didn't move money suddenly. That would have raised alarms. Instead, I followed patterns I'd helped design for his family years earlier, protective structures, he'd called them. I mirrored their logic. Used their language. Borrowed their trust. I placed ownership where it made sense. Control where it mattered. Distance where it was necessary. And I did it all while still making his coffee every morning. At work, I became quieter. Smaller. I stopped offering ideas. Stopped correcting mistakes. When Graham spoke confidently about his system, I smiled and nodded. When his new executives ignored me, I stepped aside. Let them underestimate me. Men like Graham never notice silence, they mistake it for submission. Then I moved outward. His parents were first. They loved comfort. Security. The appearance of stability. Over dinner one night at their house, his father complained about interest rates on their lake property. Banks are tightening, he grumbled. Hard to keep up. I looked up from my plate, keeping my voice soft. I might know some people from my old network, I said casually. They handle restructuring. Better terms. Less exposure. His mother tilted her head. Interested. The first time she'd ever looked at me like I might be useful. Within weeks, the paperwork was done. Perfect on the surface. Threaded underneath. They signed everything willingly. Thanked me. Smiled. His sisters came next. Trust funds. Education accounts. Future plans. I helped them optimize. Shift assets. Protect growth. Avoid unnecessary taxes. They hugged me. Called me sweet. Never questioned why I understood the documents better than their advisors. Each signature tightened the net. Each thank you pulled the knot closer. The hardest part wasn't the mechanics. It was the waiting. Carrying the secret like a stone in my pocket. Heavy. Cold. There were nights I lay awake beside Graham, listening to his breathing, wondering how someone could sleep so peacefully while dismantling another person's life. But I didn't hate him. I didn't need to. I only needed clarity. My mother visited one rainy afternoon. She arrived with a worn suitcase and the kind of hug that reminds you who you were before you learned to disappear. Graham greeted her politely, then announced he'd be gone for the weekend, another client trip. As his car pulled away, she squeezed my hand across the kitchen island. How long has he made you feel like this? She asked quietly. I froze. Like what? She met my eyes. Like you have to earn your place in your own home. The tears came fast then, hot and unplanned. I told her everything. The files. The mistress. The plan. She listened without interrupting. Then she stood, wiped her hands, and said, "Come on. We're packing what you'll need, just in case." We hid documents in the basement. Cash in envelopes. Copies of contracts in places Graham never touched. "When you're ready," she said, holding my face in her hands, "I'm here." That was the moment I knew I wasn't alone anymore. The flowers arrived a week later. Lavish. Pink and white. Expensive. The card wasn't for me. I called the florist, smiling as if confirming an order. Yes, they said cheerfully. Weekly delivery. To the downtown hotel suite. 6 months. That's how long he'd been planning to replace me. I set the bouquet on the counter and felt the last illusion fall, not with a crash, but with a sigh. By the time my birthday arrived, everything was ready. The systems. The switches. The fail-safes. The black envelope wasn't a threat. It was documentation. Proof. Timelines. Triggers. All waiting for one final thing. His arrogance. By the time we arrived at the restaurant, I felt calm. Not numb. Not detached. Clear. The kind of calm that only comes when every decision has already been made. Graham walked beside me, phone in hand, smiling at messages he angled away from my view. He barely looked at me as we stepped out of the car. Try to enjoy tonight, he said casually. Like he was giving advice to a stranger. I nodded. Inside, the private room was already alive with voices. Laughter. Clinking glasses. Confidence. People rose to greet him. Hands reached out. Praise flowed. No one greeted me with warmth. Just polite smiles. And then there was Lena. Sitting exactly where I'd expected her to be. She looked up as we entered, her expression flickering for just a second when she saw me. Then she smiled, slow, deliberate, and turned back to Graham, touching his sleeve. She thought she was about to inherit a life. She had no idea she was standing on borrowed ground. Dinner dragged on. Course after course I barely tasted. I watched the room the way I always had to, quietly, analytically. I noticed the way Graham commanded attention. The way people leaned in when he spoke. The way they mirrored his laughter. And I noticed something else. The way they stopped looking at me entirely. I wasn't part of the room anymore. I was already history. When dessert arrived, my phone vibrated once in my purse. Then again. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. Everything was in motion. Graham stood, tapping his glass gently. The room obeyed instantly. This dinner, he said, smiling, isn't for love. Laughter. It's for closure. More laughter. Then he turned toward me. And delivered the line he'd practiced. You failed as a wife. And tonight, we're done. The sound that followed wasn't just laughter. It was release. Like everyone had been waiting for permission to enjoy my humiliation. Lena laughed openly now, clapping softly. I looked at her. She wouldn't be laughing for long. I reached into my purse. Pulled out the black envelope. And slid it across the table. The room went quiet, not out of respect, but confusion. Before you celebrate, I said calmly, check your phones. Some people chuckled nervously. I continued. Call your parents. Their house was repossessed an hour ago. Call your brother. His trust account is frozen. And call your partners, your firm won't open tomorrow. Silence fell like gravity. Phones buzzed. One by one, screens lit up. Faces changed. A man near the end of the table stood abruptly. Why can't I access the account? Someone else whispered, I just got an alert, everything's locked. Graham's smile cracked. Not shattered. Cracked. He grabbed the envelope and opened it with shaking hands. His eyes moved quickly. Too quickly. The color drained from his face. He looked up at me. What did you do? He asked, his voice low, urgent. I leaned in just enough for him to hear. I stopped pretending you were smarter than me. The room exploded. His father stood, phone pressed to his ear, pacing. One of the partners slammed his glass down, demanding answers. Another guest rushed toward the door, already calling a lawyer. Lena froze. Her smile vanished. She looked at Graham, not with love, but fear. Because she finally understood something. If he could lose everything this fast, she was standing next to a man with nothing left. I stood. Smoothed my dress. And walked away. In the hallway outside the private room, I heard the first shout. The system is down. Then another. The bank won't answer. I didn't look back. The elevator doors closed softly. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Outside, the night air was cool. Clean. I crossed the street to my car, heels steady against the pavement. Inside, I opened my laptop. The dashboard lit up, alerts firing in perfect sequence. Loans called in. Assets frozen. Systems locked. Through the restaurant windows, I could see chaos bloom. People shouting. Phones raised. A tray shattering on the floor. Graham's world collapsing, exactly as designed. I drove away. Not to a hotel. Not to my mother's house. To my condo by the lake. The one he never knew existed. I didn't rush to open the door. I finished my tea first. Outside, the doorbell rang again, longer this time. Impatient. Desperate. When I finally opened it, Graham stood there looking like a stranger wearing my husband's face. Wrinkled suit. Unshaven jaw. Eyes hollow with the kind of fear men only feel when control slips through their fingers. Evelyn, he said, voice cracking. Please. I stayed in the doorway. Didn't invite him in. Didn't move aside. Please, what? I wondered. Everything's gone, he said, holding up the thick envelope of legal papers like it might save him. The firm. My parents' house. The accounts. The partners won't answer my calls. I nodded once. I know. You don't understand, he continued, panic creeping into his voice. They're saying the systems were never really mine. That the ownership, that's correct, I said calmly. He stared at me. You can fix this, he said. You always could. That sentence almost made me laugh. I took the envelope from his hands and flipped through the pages. Threats. Accusations. Legal language designed to intimidate. I handed it back. You should read the footnotes, I said gently. And the patents. His face twisted. You stole from me. I tilted my head. No, I replied. I reclaimed what I built. Silence hung between us. For years, he believed my quiet meant weakness. Now he was learning what it really meant. My lawyers will destroy you, he said, reaching for anger because fear wasn't working. I smiled faintly. They already tried. His eyes widened. You should check your email, I added. They sent you something this morning. He pulled out his phone, fingers shaking. Scrolled. Stopped. His shoulders slumped. Evidence. Emails. Source code timestamps. Recordings. Contracts. Everything. Proof that the firm, the system, the success, had always been mine. I never wanted to hurt you, he whispered finally. That was the lie he needed to tell himself. I looked at him steadily. You never noticed me, I said. And that was your mistake. I stepped back. You should go. He lingered, searching my face for something, mercy, regret, familiarity. He found none. When he turned away, his shoulders were smaller than I remembered. The fallout was swift. The board called an emergency meeting. For the first time, I entered that glass-walled room not as the invisible wife, but as the woman holding every key. Men shifted in their seats. Avoided my eyes. I connected my laptop to the screen. Ownership structures appeared. Patent filings. Control paths. Every system you rely on, I said evenly, belongs to me. Someone cleared his throat. What do you want? I laid out my terms. Majority control, or I sell everything to their biggest competitor. They signed within the hour. But I didn't stay. The building still smelled like a life I'd outgrown. I sold the core system months later. The deal made headlines. Not because of Graham, but because the truth finally surfaced. Who built it? Who was erased? Who reclaimed it? With the proceeds, I founded my own firm, Hart & Company. Different values. Different structure. I hired women like me. Brilliant. Overlooked. Tired of shrinking. We built something real. Something honest. Something ours. Graham faded. The investigations dragged on. Partners vanished. Friends disappeared. Lena left quietly when the money dried up. The man who once humiliated me in public now pitched small firms who barely remembered his name. I didn't watch closely. I didn't need to. One afternoon, my mother visited the office. She stood in front of the glass door bearing my name, Evelyn Hart, founder and CEO. She touched the letters gently. You didn't just survive, she said softly. You became. I hugged her. And for the first time in years, pride felt like something I owned, not something I borrowed. Months later, at a conference, I saw Graham across the room. Our eyes met briefly. He looked away first. I delivered my talk to a full audience about ownership, visibility, and refusing to let others define your worth. When the applause came, it wasn't loud. It was solid. Earned. That night, I stood by the window of my condo, watching the lake reflect the city lights. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. You took everything from me. I didn't reply with words. I sent a photo instead. The article announcing our latest success. Then I blocked the number. Because I didn't take everything. I dismantled what was false. And in its place, I built something true. A life that belonged to me. Sometimes betrayal doesn't break you. It clears the space for who you were always meant to be. And sometimes, the quiet woman at the table is the most dangerous one of all.